and get started with committee meetings tonight. Let the record show that all members of council are present, as well as the president of council. Diane, do you want to identify which other city officials are here tonight?
Yes, Mayor Kathy Perry.
Okay. Good evening.
Safety Service Director Barb Sylvester.
Present.
Law Director Justin Richard.
Present.
And Economic Development Director David May.
Present.
That's it. Madam President. I mean, Sir President Pro Tem.
Madam Pro
Okay. Community development.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I have two items that fall under old business this evening. The first is the rezoning of 4 parcels located on Lincoln Way. The City Planning Commission has recommended the approval of this following request. We do have scheduled a public hearing on May 16th at 6 p.m. Does anyone have any questions or any concerns regarding this request? All right. And so be ready for that public hearing. And the second item of business is to enter into a capital improvement, community park, recreation, conservation project pass-through grant agreement with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. We did table this for administration to get additional information regarding this request. And is there any questions regarding this from our end and from administration? Yes, Mayor Kathy Cavazero, would you please come up and give us an update if you're...
David, do you want to tell us? Because
Good evening. You're talking about the splash park? Yes. So David worked very hard with Representative Schuring in his office, and we were able to take out the word reservoir park. We also are asking them to take it out for this legislation as well. So they're working on that as we speak. So we can strike that from, and we'll be getting a new agreement, I also believe, correct? So we'll be getting a new agreement from the state, and then we'll bring that back to you. But I also talked to the family as well. Someone asked me if I spoke with the family, and I did call them, and they would prefer that it be in Reservoir Park. But for the gift of the money that the state is giving us, they do not want to see it not happen. So, but their preference is Reservoir Park.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the mayor? And Mr. Mayor, do you have any additional information?
No, at this point, I would think that we may come back next week and ask to extend the tabling, just because we're going to wait to see when the actual legislation passes, so we have everything in place.
Great, thank you so much. All right, that's all I have for community development. Thank you.
Economic development. Nothing this week, Mr. Lewis. Public welfare.
I have nothing to see.
Parks and recreation.
I have nothing to say.
Police and fire.
Nothing from police and fire, Mr. Lewis.
Public utilities.
Nothing from public utilities.
Roads and courts.
Nothing from roads and courts this evening.
Streets and highways.
Nothing from streets and highways.
Finance. Okay. The first piece we have here is a appropriation from the unappropriated balance of the probation fund to go to servicing contracts for $175,000. This is coming from the courts. It is stating that they need to pay invoices for upgrade to security video system and improvements to court offices. I've not heard any additional information, so I don't know exactly what improvements those would cover. I'm assuming the administration, do you guys have any information about the improvements that they're speaking of? We can reach out to Judge Betty and see if he wants to elaborate on all that. Again, this is probation services funds, so these are his dollars. We're just acting essentially as a pass-through for the court for money that they've collected and using at their will. Any questions? I'll sign it for the next meeting, and then we will follow up with the judge to see if he wants to elaborate a little bit on some of the use of the funds. Next, we have a legislation request to appropriate the unappropriated balance of the Waste Management Grant Fund, $10,500 to pay for city resident yard waste removal as a result of increased disposal rates and increased usage. The appropriation is expected to carry services through the end of 2022. This does not have emergency language on it. Are there any questions or comments from the administration? Yes, Mr. Barrett.
Maybe not specifically to the administration, but somebody somewhere along the line. Right now, the city garage and waste collection that they have down there for yard waste, and that's only open from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday until fall. We were just discussing a little bit ago about the possibility of maybe one Saturday, say the first Saturday of the month, a few hours. Is that possible? Mayor?
Can I use this one here? June 4th is Impact Massillon Day, and it'll be open during June 4th. We also have another group that's working with us. It's called Manners Matter in Massillon, and we're taking this to a citywide effort. So we're asking everyone to clean up their yards on June the 4th, but that is Impact Massillon Day as well. So there will be 4 additional dumpsters in the city garage. Okay?
And I saw that promoted on Facebook today, so good job. The next piece we have here is you're having attached memorandum. The brief of it is in order to address the opioid epidemic, there is a recommendation for a joint group, a Region 6 board to come together. I will go ahead and have Mr. Richard explain further.
Good afternoon. As you know, we've been going on this opioid thing for at least over a year now, if not more, bless you. And there is, in fact, as Councilman Lewis said, there is a recommendation, but there's also a requirement. So how the money was structured per the resolution with the lawsuit was that 30% will go directly to local government. So that's us. 30% off the top goes straight to us. Now, we've not received any of those funds, but council will be hearing in the future either a request from the auditor or through us via the auditor to set up a fund, because those have specific items that the money can be used for, all opioid related. So they kind of, a lot like some of the other funds that we've received recently, they have to sit over to the side. And so that way they're watched a little bit better. But we believe we're close. We believe we're probably a month or two when those funds start to be distributed. An additional 55% is set up for the local region. I think that you've heard it enough now, but our region is Stark County. So that's really good because, one, all of the law directors that started a study group, we all get along with each other. We all have Stark County, obviously, foremost on our mind as far as benefiting from these funds. But now we have to take the extra step of forming that board. So all of us that were part of the lawsuit, we all put forth a vote as far as the membership. There were, I don't remember, Mayor, about 5 or 6 choices. We chose one after consultation with the mayor. It was not, it was pretty close to the one that ultimately was chosen, but we were outvoted. And the composition as it stands, I believe, is on the second page, and it talks about 2 members appointed by the Stark County Commissioners, 2 members appointed by the largest municipality, 2 members appointed by the majority vote of the mayors or head executive of the remaining municipalities, 2 appointed by a majority vote of boards of township or the SCTA, and 2 community members with experience with opioid crisis elected by those above. So the rest of the other 10 would, they would elect the other 2. Unfortunately, the first meeting will be a week from today, and I know that Canton is voting on it this evening and or next week, and so will we. So we will not be able to send somebody as an official representative, which is our duty. I think only 4 other regions, or even one step beyond this, that will even be able to send somebody officially, but we will send folks down, a couple of us from the board, or the law directors, just to be able to see what's going on. We'll be out in the so we'll be able to report back to everybody. So by the time they have a second one, we'll be able to incorporate that. The board's official duty, its main one, of course, is to act up as a committee to vet and ultimately vote on nonprofits that will request money from the board as that starts to come in, and it will come in over a period of 15 to 20 years, and for projects that would specifically help and promote, whether it's opioid abuse or treatment, something that is outlined in the particulars. So, are there any questions?
Questions? All right, thank you. I'll put it on the agenda. I'll sign it to have it on the agenda. The next piece we have is old business, and it is the pay scale for the captains in the police department. We'll probably have to look at the administration if there's any questions or discussion about this. The chief did discuss it. We have not had a lot of robust discussion about it. I can describe a little bit of the structure from my understanding, and please, administration, correct me if I'm wrong. But as we know, we have our blue unit, which is going to be our patrolman, and they all were recently negotiated an increase in their pay to try to help better align them with surrounding communities. Then we have our gold, which is going to be our sergeants and lieutenants, and they have what we call the pay differential, where there's a certain percentage. So a sergeant is going to make a certain percentage more than the top patrolman, and then the lieutenant will make a certain percentage more than that top sergeant. That's all been negotiated in their gold contract as well. So now the captains are outside of that gold contract. They have a differential where they will make a certain percentage more than the lieutenant. And then not referenced in this legislation, but just for your information, the chief is 19.75% higher than the captains. So what the legislation is in front of us is asking that the captains get to increase their percentage over a period of years by 1% every year for the next 3 years. I believe they're at 12 right now, or 13 right now? 12? They're at 13 right now, and this would take them up to like 15 or so. Percent difference between the lieutenants and us. I can tell you that I personally am not in favor of this, but I'll leave it open for conversation if anybody has any comments. Mr. Perry?
Yeah, everybody got the percentage interest across the board. What this is just over on top of all that. It just seems way too much. I mean, that's just too much to ask for right now. That's just my opinion, but I think.
Yeah, it seems to me that as you bring the blue unit up, even though we did most of the raises to the lower, so it didn't necessarily impact the sergeants, right? Because they're getting paid off the higher end of those blue units. But as you bring the blue unit up and they negotiate their pay raises, whatever it was in their contract, then the gold unit's going to go up because it's a differential. So you give the blue a raise, the gold gets a raise. Gold gets a raise, captain gets a raise. Captain gets a raise, the chief gets raises. Everything's based off of it. So now when you increase the differential, they're getting even more of a raise on top of that. It almost feels like a double raise for that. And what makes me feel unsettled about it, unless I'm misunderstanding it, is, you give your blue a percentage raise because we appreciate them being the boots on the ground, and then the guys above them get to see even larger chunks. So that's my concern. But it'll be up for a vote, because I believe this is the one we tabled, I believe. So we'll get a call to the calendar on
Do you know what their actual numbers are? Like what they were making, what they're making now with their new raise? And then if we give them this extra raise on top of it, what they'll be?
I believe they're around 90 right now, and with this plan, they would get them up to around 100. Is that accurate?
That's good.
Yeah.
So it's almost a second raise of $10,000 on top of what they
Over
are.
the course of 3 years, it would take them up to $100,000 a year.
For the captains. But what, and then the chief would go up
Yeah.
automatically too,
19.75%.
on top of that. Wow. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that'll be coming up for a vote on Monday. The next piece we have is the pay scales for mayor and auditor. That is coming up for third reading. The proposal that's in front of us right now is $90,000 for the mayor to be effective on January 1, 2024, $77,000 for the auditor effective same date, and both of them would forego a cost of living raise. They would just get this one-time flat. Any additional discussion on this? Questions? Ms. Green?
Yeah, I've stated it before, I'm not in favor of this. I'm not in favor of this percentage or dollar amounts. I have looked and did my due diligence, as I was told to do, regarding the salaries. I think, my opinion, just looking at it, I was comparing what I received in the package from the Ohio Municipal League. In addition to that, since that is a self-report system, not all municipalities report this information, because Massillon was not reported in this document. I was looking at not only our census, but they also list the number of employees, full-time employees, number of full-time police, and number of full-time fire. So that's kind of where I was kind of gearing and trying to condense this information and compare that data that OML did collect from municipalities, and I think we're on the high end when I looked at municipalities other than what was presented to us for a more, in my opinion, a more truer picture to compare apples and apples. So I would not be in favor of this. Thank you.
Mr. Derrick?
Just a question, Mr. Mayor. When you said we're on the higher end, the proposal's on the higher end or the current salary is on the higher end?
The proposals of those municipalities that I was looking at, comparing our census to our full-time employees, fire, and police.
Which census did you use?
Well, we're at 32,484 is our census. So I was,
I thought you meant the collective census.
no. I used the same OML, the Ohio Municipal League website. I did get the more current version because I think we were looking at 2019.
One was 19 and one was 20.
20, yeah, so I was looking at 2021, and I just think we're a little higher than we should be. So that's just my opinion,
But with the proposal on the current.
with the proposal in front of us.
Mr. Lombardi?
Mr. Kramer, can I ask who you were comparing it to? Which ones you used?
I looked at Worcester, Stowe, New Philadelphia, Marion, Mansfield, Findlay, Athens, and Ashland. Thank you.
Ms. Howard-Smith?
So what was their average salaries for?
Well, with those municipalities, it ranged from 75.6 for mayor up to 91.9. For auditor, it went from 64.9 to 84,000.
Mr. Lombardi?
Are all of those municipalities the same type of government we have?
No,
Okay,
No,
that's,
but nor was our list. You had listed some chartered also. So,
who was the charter in my list? That's where I got those 5, was because they weren't charters.
let me look. I did take that into consideration. Let me find your information. Brooklyn, Berea, Garfield Heights, Ashland, Barberton,
To be clear, you're looking at the big list that they supplied, not the supplemental list that Mr. Lombardi supplied.
correct, but I was looking at with the 2019 salary that lists out the different form of government. So that's kind of where I was just, trying to take a look at what we have in front of us to make an educated decision on how I was going to vote for this piece. Thank you.
For those ones listed, aren't they a lot smaller than our population? Those that your top numbers, I think they're not nearly as large as our city.
There's some of them smaller. Some of them smaller.
Marion is larger at 36,837. Stowe is at 34,837. Mansfield is at 47,821. Finley is at 41,202. So out of the 3, 6, 8 that I have provided you, 4 are larger than us and 4 are lower than us.
And what was
with
the difference
census.
when you were talking about like Berea and Brooklyn, aren't they considered?
Those are chartered.
Mr. Barrett?
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. So, from what you just said, though, the lowest ones are higher than we are now, and the highest one you quoted is higher than our proposal. So I'm still not understanding the rationale of resistance.
My thinking is what has been proposed, I believe, in my opinion, is higher than I would like to go at this point. This is just my opinion. And, after I had time to look at the data, kind of get an understanding of our number of employees, our number of fire, the number of police, and try to review these municipalities and come up with similar stats so we can compare apples to apples. Like I stated from day one, I just felt that those salaries provided, I thought were high. I've had calls from constituents that have voiced the same concern. So I wanted to have time to pull the data out, look at the data, compare the data, and, that's where I ended it. Just to make sure that I knew what I was looking at instead of making a decision on something I was not fully educated on.
Mr. Gray?
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. First of all, I gotta admit, I did not go do the in-depth analysis Mrs. Creamer did, and I appreciate the fact that you did do that and given us that information. I tend to feel along the same lines as Mrs. Creamer, though, that I think our administration, and I'm not talking about current administration, because this is not going to affect the current administration, this is in the future, but I think that, yes, we deserve to be, our administration deserves to be higher paid and be closer to the top, which I think that the proposal that's in front of us puts them very near the top of the communities that we've looked at, I just can't see it doing it all at once. I think, you know, in this last year with the inflation rate that it is, our citizens are seeing their net pay going down, and we're looking at making an increase to our administration of a very large amount. I believe I calculated 28% for the mayor. I'm not saying that eventually that's not deserved, but I'm not comfortable with doing it all at once. I think we should look at doing a smaller amount initially, and then perhaps some building in some steps for allowing the cost of living increase to go into play and raise it that way. But as far as this proposal with these amounts all at once, I'm not in favor.
So what I'm hearing, and others chime in, because we're gonna come up to a vote possibly on Monday, and I wanna make sure we're clear, but it sounds like for the 9 of us, from what I've heard, we're in agreement that there is an adjustment that needs to be made. It's how much of an adjustment is needed to be made. So I would say for to help Mr. Thayer, Ms. Lombardi, and the rest of us, if there's an alternative number or thought, can someone throw it out there? And that's the spirit of what this discussion should be. Instead of saying, no, this is not the right, well, then what would be the correct? Mr. Smith, I think you had your hand up.
I just wanted to bring up another point, again, coming from Northeast Ohio Media Group. There's other factors besides just the data salary that are not included in this as far as total compensation, and I think that needs to be brought forward to light as well, because I'm not sure what the total compensation of Massillon receives. But they state for an average salary of $70,000, when you add in the cost of state pension contributions, health care, life insurance premiums, vacation payouts, bonuses, the average then gets bumped up to about $92,000 with a median of $103,000. So I think that needs to be factored into this discussion as well. Thank you.
Mr. Thayer?
Thank you, Susan. And again, they don't publish those, but I can't imagine that they would be that dissimilar throughout the state. Everybody's going to have health benefits, pensions, the same pension plan. So PERS, I'm sure everybody has to pay into. It's the same, exactly the same to everybody. And then health insurance, if you offer anything else, I'm not sure, but I think we have a good policy. I don't know that anybody's in better or worse because they don't list that. But, and it's not quite 28%, it's more like 16, it's almost 17% raise, which after having none for 20 years, as I recall, it's been almost 20 years since the last one. 18% one time isn't that really much. It's not even a catch up. So, just thank you.
Ms. Harwood-Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Rose. I just think, I mean, all people have the benefits. Like Jim said, it's been 20 years since we've had a raise. And if we approve something as opposed to a flat raise, we have control over. If we approve something where we're going to go with the percentage of cost of living with the way the markets are heading, we could really end up jumping up even faster and no control over stocking our salaries. Our mayor's the leader of our city, ahead of, over the police, over the fire, and you have the chief making much more than her. You have, the next tier in command making much more than her. Right now, we're talking about the lieutenants making $90,000, and then plus in a couple of years being over $100,000 as a lieutenant. And this is the mayor. Whether our current mayor or whoever runs, I think in order to have the best qualified candidates, I know a number of people that I've talked to in the past would never even consider the job because they're not going to leave their current job because bottom line they still have to raise a family, and we're in this market situation that we're going and heading into. So I am for the rates and everything else, and I don't really think that we're that far off. You know, I did my due diligence too, and I think, you know, they did a pretty good job on their target numbers. So I support it, just.
Okay. And then not to be controversial here, but I'm going to call in my math teacher to tell me if I'm wrong. But if we multiply 71,000 by 0.18, which would be 18%, it's only 12,780. So when you add that 71,000, you only get 83,780. So, but if you multiply that by 28, that 0.28, you get that 20,000 number. Would that be the proper way to do that math? So 71,000 plus 19 times 0.28 would be 19,880. So 28% is what's on the table. And that is the depth of clarity. Anyone else have any recommendations? Because without recommendations, we're going to leave it as is, and it'll come up for a vote on Monday. All right. Mr. Rick.
When you say recommendations, you mean to change the legislation as it's before us?
I'm just saying if there's someone that objects to the current proposed pay rates, and you think there's a better number, what is it? And that way maybe the other people that are opposed can chime in or people can discuss. Just so that we can have a clear picture for Monday.
I would be comfortable with about half of the increase that we're proposing right now. But that's up to the people that put legislation forth if they want to amend. But that would be my feeling. As I stated, I'm not opposed to an increase. I just think 28% is too much at one time. If we had some thoughts on how to increase that over time to even larger amount, I would be open to that as well. But at this point, I think 28% is too much. I would be happy, or I'd be comfortable with probably half that, maybe 15%.
Mr. McCarthy?
So if we went to 15%, what would you then want to see? Because you stated that the plan that you'd like to see was graduated increments.
Right. I'm not sure exactly how we would do that. If we specify in legislation we do a certain percentage more each year. Mr. Lewis, you had mentioned when we were talking one time, cost of living increase. How would that play in?
So, I'm sorry. The mayor, regardless of who it is, and just like all of us, can only get raises at the beginning of a term. So that is why, if any of us that were on council last year saw a slight increase at the beginning of this year, because it was a change of term, it was the cost of living raise that hit us. So if you do a proposal for the mayor, say at 28%, and you don't put a cost of living, it just stays there until the next term, and then the cost of living would kick in, because that's already an ordinance, unless council does something else. We could, like you suggested, take it to 15, and then let the cost of living stay. Don't remove it, so they get the 15% plus whatever the cost of living is in 2024. But they would only get it on the front end, and then they would have to wait the term for another one to come. I don't believe we could check with the law department, do a little research. I don't think we could put something in that would allow a graduated increase year over year for the 4 years of the term, because that would violate. It has to be what it is, and that is what it is. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Bottom line, we're all representatives of the city and various wards. I reached out to several people, and I've also had several people reach out to me, and I have yet to come across anybody that's in favor of any kind of a raise. So based on that alone, I have to be against it, no matter what, as a representative of my ward, no matter what we put forward. That's what they want, so that's how I'm going to vote. So I appreciate all the information, the data, and I've done my due diligence. I pulled up the 2020 census as well. Pulled up the data from the Northeast Ohio Media Group. so on and so forth, but I'm gonna vote the way my constituents want me to vote. And I hope everybody else does the same. Thank you.
Mr. Lamar.
I'd like to also hear from Mrs. Creamer what kind of suggestions she has on what she'd like to see as far as graduated increase.
Well, I really haven't thought about it. I don't know. I can't answer that tonight. I haven't thought into that. As Mr. Lewis stated, it's upon each term. So that's something I would have to think about and consider. But keep in mind, you know, we've heard from numerous council members that aren't in favor when we were speaking of the captain's raises. We were not in favor of that, and that's a percentage increase. So I guess I'm looking at a dollar amount too, and you know, how is that going to impact our budget moving forward? So let me think about it. I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Why don't we look at maybe Monday tabling this for a couple of more weeks so that others that might have a different perspective can get back together as a committee then at the next work session and give a suggestion. I have no problem reworking it. You know, I'm not in favor of not doing a raise. I think it's well overdue and well deserved for this position, these positions. But maybe give everybody a little bit more time to think in that term as far as what they'd like to see, what kind of a plan they'd like to see.
Absolutely. I have no problem tabling it up as well. Something that everybody can chew on while we, over the next couple of weeks, just remember, as I stated, they can only, you know, elected officials can only get their increase at the beginning of a term. So when we do a cost of living only, then that means, you know, there's some assumption of the cost of living, at least with my day job, when we give cost of living raises, every year the employees get a slight kick up for that cost of living raise. But when you only do it once every 4 years, you get outpaced, and that's why you start to see some of these officials' pays get lower and lower, and that's why you start to get this weird anomaly now where we're seeing police, fire, other employers in the city starting to rise up above because they're keeping pace with those cost of living raises and slowly jumping up. So I don't know what the answer is, just facilitating